chat room already on YouTube. Unmute yourself real quick, Trav. Try it.
That any better?
Well, it sounds a little better.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll work.
All right.
I'm seeing it getting ready to start up on YouTube. We're on. Yeah.
Yep. Who? All right, Bob, they are saying on YouTube that you have no sound.
But I hear you.
Hi, everybody. How you doing?
Hi, everybody. Let's go around the table. Who can you hear? All right.
Anybody?
Okay.
I can hear everybody.
Test.
I can hear everybody.
I think they're back. I think I'm back now.
You back?
Awesome. Yeah, you know, it's always one thing.
It is always.
Everyone but Bob.
It's always one thing. It's always one thing. So I
That's
have
right.
to. I have to read this.
As
Mike
long as
just heard Bobby. Okay, let me
as long as-
reread that because it's kind of important for us to read
That
that.
is. Sounds
You know, this roundtable discussion is brought to you by ResponderTraining.com. Reach out to our good friend Ron Huffman at Responder Training at 765-524-4848 or ResponderTraining.com. They are the only provider of the commercially available 1-inch propane flare, along with all your other propane and propane accessories for emergency response. That's ResponderTraining.com. Welcome, Bob Kosh, Jeff Zintak, Mike Monaco, and some guy. No,
Some guy.
Travis
do
Rebella.
do we have a translator for him? Because he's like way north.
Yeah. It should be.
But before we get going and we start, busting on everybody like we normally do, we just want to remind everybody that when we have some of the sponsors that we do this for the last several months, when we started this back up 6-7 months ago, maybe longer, some of the sponsorship, we're taking this money to promote people, get them to the conferences that unfortunately tanked this past year. So that's where some of this money goes since we started back up, I guess January of last year. So, hopefully we sponsor some people to some of these conferences, more specifically IFC. So.
Yeah, because we can't buy ourselves cars again this year. So hopefully the conferences.
Dude, how many Mercedes can I get?
3 apparently.
Ridiculous.
Well, speaking as a guy that puts on a conference, I'm excited to see you guys all come back up again this September. I'm hoping. We're still planning on one, so.
One can only hope.
We missed you, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Looking forward to it. So, what is tonight's topic? First, after the New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy
Salute,
New Year.
everybody.
Mazel tov. But recently, actually, it was Christmas Day. It was December 25th, 2020. There was quite the event in Nashville, Tennessee. And I think we want to kind of like terse that out a little bit and see how that would play out.
Yeah. So I've got just a little video picture montage. So bear with me while I share screens. We always know how great this can work or not. And then we'll talk about it. Is it playing audio at all?
I'm not hearing any audio from it.
Well, I know there was noise, right? They were playing something like, if you can hear this, evacuate.
Right. So as they were walking, let me just back this up a minute so you can see it. This is the 2 officers, their body camera. As they're walking up, there's that audio recording that everybody's heard on YouTube. And it kept telling them, you have 14 minutes to evacuate. A real eerie sounding recording. But what a lot of people don't realize is before all this, there were some shots fired. And that's what actually drew law enforcement to the area, where they started investigating and then came across this thing and walked by and went, whoa, we need to take a step back here because this is just not right. So what they're doing now is they've set up a perimeter. And what's interesting to note and again, I apologize if you guys are hearing the audio, we're not, so I'm going to talk through it. Over the radio, they said, we need to evacuate 1 block. So keep that in mind, the 1 block evacuation, which may or may not be your SOP. Now, as he turns the corner, he's going back towards his vehicle to, I guess, then put on his heavy vest, which Travis, in his gun aspects and stuff that he does, can probably talk a little bit more about ballistic vests and whatnot. But as he gets up here, and I'm going to fast forward this just a little bit. We see what happens. And look at the flash. That was a fireball.
Wow. And that was around the corner, I'm assuming.
That was right around the corner. Yep, so that was right around the corner. And when they had these, when they had all this up, sorry, bear with me 1 second. This is the one we wanted right here. Now, this is what we wanted. This shows a diagram of where it is. It's a very tight in area. That's the RV in question.
It's like Lone Stars.
Right. Old school. And we just saw that part. So let's fast forward a little bit. Now he's getting to the vehicle. And again, see the boarding on the building there? That's all intact right now. In a few seconds, it won't be. There's your flash. And here's what comes after. that very tight, narrow roadway, and look at the destruction of that. Now, did they have propane tanks in it like some RVs have? I don't know. But I mean, that looks like a war site.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you would definitely get that concussion bouncing back and forth in that narrow.
Exactly.
That corridor type effect.
Yeah, especially with the heavy duty structural brick on one side and then your stick construction on the other.
There was guys in our firehouse that were talking about how are things pulled out into the street past the were they overhauling? Were they pulling the debris out into the street? And the discussion was actually no, they weren't. The concussion actually pulls it out into the street. And maybe Travis, could you like the positive and negative?
So with every blast, there's a positive and negative pressure effect. So you have the initial positive blast that goes out, and then that creates almost like a vacuum that creates a negative pressure effect also, which you see like broken glass where it could almost be a little bit confusing to you because the glass is pushed on the outside of the building, all this debris on the outside of the building. What actually happened after that initial blast wave, the negative pressure sucked everything back out towards the direction of the blast.
And just something to note real quick, if you look at this picture, and I froze it here, if you think back to a fire scene where you're looking at the point of origin, you can see how that black cloud that goes up along the side of the building where it was at. And there was some chatter out there that this had remnants of like a black powder type substance. Low, what do they call it? Low det, Travis?
Yeah, so it's almost like a slower explosive. It isn't as high-speed explosion as you get
right.
Some of your peroxide-based explosives, more on the info end of it.
And I just want to be completely clear about this. We're not talking about anything that's internal. This is all publicly found information, right. Pictures. Some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about is basically from Wiki or local Fox affiliates. This is going to be an evolving scene, and there's going to be quite the discussion on this in coming months, if not years, about this. There's a class that I teach that still talks about Oklahoma City bombing, which was 1995. We're going to be talking about this one for quite a while. The Boston bombing, which was what, 03? 05? Somewhere around there. It was definitely after 2001.
Yeah.
I don't remember when, but it was a long time ago. We're still talking about that one.
And just some little quick notes and tidbits of stuff again that we found in the different areas that are not, secret squirrel stuff, that this individual apparently sent packages to friends with conspiracy writings and, aliens were coming down and doing this kind of stuff. He was a real big freak on the whole 5G thing, the whole 5G network, a big conspiracy theorist. And it sounded, honestly, like he had some type of potential mental issues.
Allegedly. Of
course, always allegedly. But they interviewed.
It did occur right in front of an AT&T building.
It did occur in front. Yes, thank you. From the AT&T building, which, if I'm not mistaken, was like one of the major areas for that part of the U.S. Is that right, Travis?
I believe it was. Yeah. This created a huge outage for them.
Right. So they talked to several bomb experts and that have chimed in this different chat rooms and whatnot. And people have said, it had remnants of black powder. It had remnants of tannerite. It had, there's all kinds of different theories out there. Again, nothing has been put out official. Nobody knows, but they think of it more of a low order type explosive, if I'm saying that right, Travis, than a high det type situation.
All right. So Travis, walk me through what you would expect, because give your background real quick, right? You're on one of the J Hurt teams.
Yeah, so I'm a fireman, but through that I'm also a hazmat tech for the state, and through that job I'm assigned to a J Hurt team, which is assigned to the State Police Bomb Squad here in Massachusetts.
So you guys work together
Correct.
as a hazmat unit and a bomb tech. So looking at a scene like this from say a operations level, we'll start off with an operations level. What kind of things would you hope an operations level person would do? And then what kind of things would you hope a technician on this scene would do, say, before you guys got there, in preparation for a J-Hurt team coming or the next tier up on its way? What kind of things would you expect to be done by those units?
So we're talking pre-blast.
Either or. Good. Pick one and go with it.
So yeah, pre-blast. You know, my role within the bomb squad for something like this is probably going to be more towards the liaison side of it, where I speak firemen a little bit better than some of the cops do. So we would want them to start looking at your evacuation distances, kind of what these folks did. You know, you show up, you've got someone that's warning you, evacuate. We're going to evacuate. And when you start looking at evacuations, you start looking at your, I don't have them in front of me, but your ATF evacuation distance cards. I think you're looking at like 3,700 feet for something the size of an RV.
Which I think
those charts are in the ERG.
They're in the ERG, and they're also on a Chemical Companion. I would, because the Chemical Companion is a little more interactive, and
Yep.
I'm just saying it would probably be a little bit as easy as to get it.
Yeah, so I mean, you're looking, 3,800 feet somewhere in there, and start taking it seriously and getting everyone out of it, out of the area. The important thing to remember is not only your blast pressure, but your shrapnel. If you can see the bomb can get you. Just shelter and isolate and evacuate the area. Once a tech shows up, again, until we find some type of chemical component, something that's going to really involve me, it's going to be the bomb tech going down range. Probably, I'm going to guess for something like this, they're probably going to be a little hesitant to put someone downrange in a suit. This is going to be a job for a robot all day long.
Interesting.
So Travis, post bomb blast, do you guys get concerned about secondary devices, and are you concerned with any rad component to it? Do you guys have?
Yeah, absolutely. And post Boston Marathon bombing, that was one of the big concerns that happened to a lot of the responding hospitals, where all the people that coming in there, they did have elements on scene. There were CST elements on scene that were clearing people for chem and rad exposure, but none of that information was being relayed to the hospitals, and that was really, really a big concern for them. For something like this, that's going to be huge for us, right? The good news is most rad meters are pretty prevalent these days, so we can kind of clear that pretty quickly. Secondaries, that's still going to be a huge concern of ours. Searches are going to have to happen, and honestly, what happened here, from a law enforcement standpoint, it's a crime scene now. The detonation has happened. If there's no emergency for life safety, now it becomes a crime scene. Now everything slows down and everything starts getting documented. And
let me ask you that: is it a crime scene pre-blast?
Yeah, absolutely, it is.
It could be, right? I mean,
absolutely.
If it looks suspicious, if it looks like a duck and it smells like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it could be a duck. So,
absolutely, until proven otherwise, it is.
Right.
But we shouldn't, as a fire department, we shouldn't be afraid to try to go in there and search for potential victims. I mean, this was a little unique, right? Like 6 o'clock in the morning, nobody's probably in some of these stores and buildings.
Life safety always takes precedent. So yeah, we would go in there, would clear it from any victims, and then once there is no more life safety, like I said, we kind of start taking a hands-off approach. We wouldn't want to disturb it any more than we have to after that.
Do you guys take any considerations for structural entering structures that may be compromised? How do you guys deal with that, or you just deal with it as it comes along?
So for those buildings, yeah, I mean, I would be exceptionally concerned sending people in to start doing searches. I mean, those buildings are extremely structurally compromised. Tech rescue would be probably my first call for this.
See, and this is something I just want to throw this out there because we were having, we'll say, a lively discussion with some of our rescue companies, and they were saying we were talking about the possibility of them having to get into a chemical protective suit at the same time as doing structural, shoring, and they're like, that'll never happen. But if this wasn't just a straight bomb, let's say this is a bomb and or a radiological and or a chemical, something that would be high heat that could hold up.
Or it's a building that is housing chemicals, anything
Perfect.
along those lines.
Perfect. I'm like, you're saying you guys practice structural support, like, structure shoring, two post shores, lace post shores in chemical. No, why would you do that? I'm like, that right there, what you see in front of you is why you need to practice something that you've never done before. And as silly as it sounds, it's like, I'm going to do an underwater, upside down, at night extrication. It'll never happen. Yes.
Bobby, I think you're bringing up a great point, because in this day and age, we're seeing this coming together. I mean, I've talked about it forever with confined space, and this is actually nothing more than a confined space, truly. They created some confined spaces, but there's hazard components with it, and then there's structural integrity that goes with it. And then this is where we have to kind of come together, form some sort of alliance, and come up with, like you said, something that we've probably never done before. If you're going to have to do some structural shoring in MT94, that's just the way it is.
Right.
If the hazmat team says, hey, you can't do that unless you're protected, that probably should be the ultimate, correct?
You would
Yeah, I
think.
agree with that.
You would
Well,
think.
and just for real quickly, a little bit off topic, but kind of the same thing. It goes back to practicing something that you would never think of happening. How many people have done extrication having to wear bunker gear on SCBA because it's involving chemicals? Have you ever practiced doing extrication just wearing all your gear? So you've got to think outside the box.
Yeah.
And I would think for something like this, your hazard risk assessments really have to come into play. You really have to understand what you're putting your people downrange to do, whether it's rescue versus recovery.
Right, but I mean, in this situation, you could never prepare for every possibility. Your day is not long enough. I mean, if we're talking about any fire department or any police department, you work X amount of hours per week, 40 hours, let's say, a week, and no matter how you gang that up, the rest of the time is yours. And there's some uber nerds like the five of us that are sitting on the side panel here that really think about it when we're not there. But there's a lot of guys that say, goodbye, I walk out the side door, and they're not firefighters, they're not cops, they're not technical rescue. And so, like, at some point, we can't fill all the spots. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't practice on every inevitability. Whereas we have a chemical warfare, radiological. This is, and I don't want to minimize it, but an incendiary, a bomb. This could have been something more.
Well, it just goes to show why your foundation has to be so concrete, because you can't think outside and perform outside the box or outside your comfort zone if your foundation is not secure. If you got to think about what you have to do as your bread and butter, then you don't have the mental capacity to think outside the box while you're, trying to perform what it is that you're supposed to be doing to begin with. So it all just kind of wraps into constant training.
Yeah, and nowadays, like I said, with everything changing and evolving, you're going to have to do, like Bobby said, you're going to have to do some stuff that's just outside the box and totally what you wouldn't have done, 10, 20 years ago.
I hope
Informations is they're evolving.
And there's a lot of departments out there that I think it's only like 7% or something where fire departments actually do EOD. So, like, for instance, our department in Orlando, our bomb squad was part of the fire department. So our hazmat team was trained with them to get them in and out of the suits, get them their meter packages, do RIT and all that stuff. But there's a lot of teams out there that, this particular instance, again, not pointing the fingers at anybody, said, no need to call FD yet. And then a few seconds later, it went off. So how, I guess the question is to the group, the people out there, the audience, how well are you connected with your EOD team or who your EOD team is? And have you made those connections? Hey, how can we help you? How can we make your job better, safer, easier?
Zero. We don't integrate with them. With support.
Yeah, and there's a lot of departments that are like that. But what is that support level? Hey,
So,
we'll call you, or
we were pretty fortunate. Probably going on 18 years ago now, we ended up, we got a lot of colleges here in Massachusetts, and some of these kids, I guess, get bored on weekends, so they like to make stuff. And out in the western part of the state, they were making some pretty interesting stuff. You had a lot of peroxide-based explosives, some MEKP, a bunch of different stuff that these guys were making. And the commander of the bomb squad at the time realized that there was a little bit of a lag on what they could do with all these chemicals. And that kind of led to the integration of the hazmat techs right into the bomb squad. And again, we're not technicians. We're not bomb techs. That's their job. They have enough bomb techs. They need hazmat techs. So our guys are utilized in there as hazmat technicians. And it's been, there's a whole selection process. It takes time for them, for us to choose who's going to be on the team. And we make sure that it's guys that can work with each other. And it's been pretty successful so far. I can't recommend enough making those relationships and getting these kind of systems in place prior to a day like this. That Christmas morning, trying to deal with a site like this is not the time to be introducing yourself to the bomb squad commander.
Good point.
Yep.
So in your district, is that who would end up kind of running the incident command for a little while, or at least heavily influencing the incident commander would be your JHERT team?
So basically, we fall as a section under incident command. For in our area, or at least for this, it'd probably be the fire department in command, or a unified command with the local police department, local fire department, and we pretty much all answer to them, including the bomb squad. Like I said, we're all assets to the incident commander. That being said, yeah, I mean, we're there as subject matter experts, so we kind of feed them the information they need to make the decisions.
From everything that you've heard so far, and not to give out anything that is not public knowledge, but have there been any takeaways or lessons learned that your team has started to look at or say, oh, wow, didn't think about that. We have to think about something like that happening within our district?
So, basically, pre-blast like this, there may have been some reports that this gentleman was doing things ahead of time. And sometimes a lot of these reports kind of get disregarded. They kind of get a cursory look over, and no one really follows up on them. I think that might be one of the biggest takeaways from this is when you start having people giving reports of suspicious activity, make sure you follow up on them. Make sure you guys, your law enforcement kind of takes it seriously and doesn't just blow it off. Because every once in a while, something like this will happen.
How would that information trickle down to you? I mean, so to whoever needs to investigate that, does that go through a federal bureau? Does that go through a state agency, a local agency? Who ends up?
I mean, it can go from the top down or the bottom up. It can go from a local agency up to the feds, or it can come from the feds down to a local agency. It all depends on how the report is made, who the person calls, who the initial reporting is made to.
We just, I don't mean we, I'm saying America had a recent incident kind of locally that we may have viewed from a distance. There was one in New York City, I heard, allegedly.
I saw that on the news network, actually.
Yeah, it was in the Queens Mall. Maybe, a day or two ago you heard about that on your text device?
Ago, I heard it. Yeah.
Monday, I think it came out.
Monday,
on my
it came across
channels.
my beeper.
Beeper. Beep, 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 beep.
Beat me again.
And there was
a
a Tesla that had some weird things going on with it. It was put at a weird mall, and again, weird things are happening. There was like a butane bottle in the back. It was a Tesla, so out of the charging port in the back, it had a wire coming out. Probably one of the weirdest things is there was a puppy. There was a dog. And when the cops opened the back, allegedly there was a dog that came out and was like, "Oh, good, I need to go to the bathroom."
The windows were covered.
Yeah, they had cardboard, like wet cardboard across the whole thing. It was it was absolutely something that should have been taken seriously. And they did the right thing. What was weird about it was EMS has the capacity in New York City from going from a medical trauma call, right, in your normal gear, to a fire call using like a modified fire turnout gear. They also have the ability to go into like a task force mode with ballistic vests and become part of the tactical medic on a bomb call. And it was very interesting for me personally to watch them transition from medical gear to fire gear to tactical ballistic gear, and the reasoning for it. And me personally, I thought the reasoning for it was the weak point. I think they were extremely practiced. I thought they were ready to go no matter what. I think the command part of it, saying why they should go into it, was a little lacking. That was just my little point of view there. I think it should have been done, but the reasoning for it to get done was a little bit lacking, and that's maybe a communication on my part, but I didn't really get that part. So
Bobby, what you're saying is the command portion of that was, you thought that they should have acted quicker, or they should have told them that this is how you should act, or the medical people seem like they were doing what they should do. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. They were given the command, and they acted on the command. What I thought was a disconnect was, I think the command staff on the EMS side was like, I think this would look best in the news. It almost felt like that. Like, okay, if we don't put these things on, they're going to question why we don't have them on. Get them on, and then we can always take them off, which is totally cool if you have a tactical relevance for that. But if you're doing it just for the PR thing, it didn't. And again, I'm not questioning anybody. It just didn't seem.
There you are.
Well, I'll tell you what, Bobby. We had a similar incident where we had guys in level A's working on a box truck, and they were standing in the middle of them was a guy in turnouts. It's the optics of it don't make any sense.
Right.
Was that a chief by any chance?
No, he would have had nothing on except his white shirt.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever seen the picture of the guy, the team, and it's an old picture, it's from the 80s or something like that, where the team's in level B's and they're mopping up something in the grass, and then the guy's sitting there in his golf shorts in the middle of it? Maybe I can find it. I'll put it up on the screen. But we've had that on our. We've been wanting to recreate that for years.
Yeah,
that'd be awesome.
That head or face cyclically gets changed.
It gets changed to somebody else.
Yeah. Whoever screwed up on scene last, generally that face is.
But Travis, yeah. I'm going to I want to ask you one more question. Obviously, the difference between a firecracker and a nuclear bomb would have a huge difference in the blast pattern for this thing. Is there? I don't want to say is there a hierarchy, but is there? If you have it's HMT, it's black powder versus it's it's dynamite. Is there the bomb explosion thing in the ERG? Hold on, somebody put it on the group before. Page 373. It's basically for an explosive.
Yep.
Is it finer broken out as per the chemical in distance wise, or is it just like, yeah, listen, just call it 500 feet?
So, I mean, I think you have to generalize, kind of worst case scenario. I mean, when you look at, basically, I mean, you're talking about the quantities, right? You need a lot more like ANFO to make something happen than you would TATP. I mean, the same volume of TATP as ANFO, I mean, is insane, right? You'd have a much more damaging explosive. But again, it's much more unstable. It's much more difficult to transport. It's not really a feasible explosive to work with like that. I believe the first time they saw TATP being used as a primary was with the Ariara Grande concert.
I was there.
I bet.
I was front row.
Big fan, I know. Because it's so unstable, it's a very difficult explosive to work with. So you tend to use something that's a little bit less sensitive, but a little bit more difficult to detonate. And you have to use more of it per se. Again, you have to generalize, right? You can't just say, well, for an HMTD one or a TATP one, you got to use this kind of distance. Without knowing what the product is, you got to come up with general guidelines, and I think that was kind of the best they could do with that.
But there's nothing you can see externally to say, well, it's probably this versus probably that. I mean, obviously.
Well, yeah. I mean, some of them have more push, right? When you have your more low order explosives like your ANFO, that actually has a lot more push, a lot more damaging pressure to it. Your high explosives like your peroxide based they're much quicker, they're much sharper. You'd see a lot more like damage like we saw. Not so much buildings getting knocked down as you would see with like your ANFO that has the push with it. When you look at something like the explosion over in overseas with the ANFO, I mean, they wiped out neighborhoods. It just flattened everything because of that slow push with the explosive.
The one in Lebanon.
Yeah. It had a lot of push and actually knocked down, did tremendous damage to buildings. With this, there is a lot of damage, but it's really right to the front of the building. It's right in that area. It didn't have a lot of that really heavy push that knocked it down like you would see in some of those other explosives.
And we don't know that if in the RV he had propane bottles in there also, like some RVs have.
Yeah,
I mean, I didn't see that expansion that you would typically think to see from something like that.
Yeah.
So.
And again, you're talking stuff that's like really way out of my level of expertise. But there are guys that can look at these explosions and tell you, this is probably this is probably that. Especially post blast, you got guys that their whole career are built on looking at scenes like that, and just looking at the way things are laid out and how the damage patterns went. And they can have a pretty good idea of what was used and the amounts that we used.
And some of the things that I saw that in different spots from retired experts, shall we say, from different government entities, said that it looked like there was a lot of or potentially black powder involved just because of the way the fireball went and so on. But like you said, we really have no idea right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
So Travis, I have a question as well. We're talking, obviously post blast and then a few days after. Have you ever made entry as a hazmat tech, bomb tech, to someone's place that
Like
is a
I said, we
suspect
really have no
of a
idea.
bombing? Obviously, they've probably gone to their house to look through what they had. What do you do as in your job, if you've ever done that? What are you looking for? What do you take in? How do you approach that? Something like that.
So yeah, there's been several incidences that we've done. And again, it's questionable what the nefarious intent is with some of these kids. A lot of them are college kids or beyond, and they're bored and they want to do stuff. We had one kid south of Boston who was making lots and lots of TATP, and he was taking it out into his backyard. I mean, the guy was living with his parents. I think he was early 20s. It was a $2 million townhouse, and he was into chemistry. So
That's
he
it?
makes TATP, he would take it out back, detonate it, and he had lots of it in his building.
Or groups.
Yeah. So we made entry with the bomb squad, and we're looking for precursors, we're looking for glassware, we're looking for everything that would be used in the manufacture of something like that. And we're watching the hazards, and we're trying to isolate it, and then we're talking with our bomb squad counterparts how we're going to remove it from the building, how we're going to transport it to an area, and how we're going to countercharge it with them. And while still being able to maintain a chain of evidence and taking anything that we need into custody to make sure that we can still prosecute the case with it. And that's, like I said, that's where the relationship comes in. Really, the importance of that relationship when, we work with these guys all the time. Hey, what do you need? What do we need? You know what I mean? It makes it much, much easier to deal with. Again, if we had to do that just the first day, showing up on scene, hey, we got to do this together, and we've never worked together, it becomes exceptionally difficult.
Yeah.
One of the first reports to come out was that there was a vehicle explosion in Nashville, and it appears to have been intentional. My question to you is there a history of RVs unintentionally detonating or exploding that we're unaware of that would make this one intentional?
I'm not a real big RV guy.
Okay.
So, again, a little bit out of my realm, but I'm going to say no.
Okay. I was just curious because, they specifically use the word intentional. So I was
And the
wondering.
first clue is the audio that was being played from the vehicle.
Yeah, again, not a cop, but I'm going to say that's cool.
We call that a clue.
Yeah, that's cool. Yep.
Oh, wow. Good stuff, guys. Thank you so much for everybody for coming on. If you didn't check out our sponsors, Responder Training at respondertraining.com, Northeast Hazmat at northeasthazmat.com, K&R Plaques at knrplaques.com, and Bob at 101 Hazmat Consultants.
Hazmat 101 Consult.
God, I always get that wrong. God.
It's okay. People can't say my name right.
See, but if I say it wrong, then you get to say it twice.
Ooh, extra.
See?
Love it.
He's a marketing genius.
He's so smart. I'm smart.
That's smart.
All right, guys. We'll see you next
SRT.
month.